What made you decide that you wanted to be a police officer?
I have. It's something I always wanted. I thought about it. When I first went into college, I actually thought I was going to go into computer programming. Had thought about law enforcement. I had some relatives that were involved in law enforcement, and had kind of always thought about it in the back of my mind. And then when I finally graduated high school and was in junior college that first year, I kind of just took one class to figure out if this is something I really want to do, and kind of made my decision from there.
Gotcha. So when did you realize that being chief or leading the department was something that you wanted to do? Was it a long-term goal, or was it something that kind of just came about because of the circumstances in the department?
I think people get in. I know how I got into the job. I got into the job for wanting to help people, and I know it sounds kind of cliche, but it really is. And don't get me wrong. It is a truly rewarding job when done correctly. And, when I first came into the career field, I thought, hey, operations is where it's at. I want to be out here. I want to be chasing down bad guys and taking bad guys to jail. But, then you realize how much you can help people and that reward you get when you do actually help somebody out there. Over time, I thought about moving up through the ranks, and never thought from day one that obviously I would ever be chief of police. Never really had that as my goal. And if you'd asked me 2 years ago if my goal was to be chief, I'd have told you the next logical rung on the ladder for me would be to be a deputy chief, and that would have been a realistic goal for myself. As far as sitting here as chief of police, I never really thought about it a lot. Is it something that maybe be in the back of your head later on in time as you get closer to retirement? Typically, our chiefs of police are people who are closer to retirement age, and I just never really thought about it because I was like, well, the next step for me hopefully is to be a deputy chief, and things just kind of fell and things happened, and the Lord put me in a place that gave me an opportunity, and it's worked out so far.
Being that you're, still pretty far off from retirement, do you see this as a position that you plan to be in for a long time into the future?
Well, obviously, we work at the will of the mayor. My goal is to be in this position until I retire. As I've been telling people as I'm forming my staff, and the way I'm taking it as we got 14, 15 months, whatever it is, until the next election, to try to implement change here and do the things that we want to do. Long term, I hope that basically, based upon our performance, whoever's sitting in that seat, whether it's Mayor Houston or somebody else, that they look at our performance, they look at the job we've been doing, and we're given an opportunity to stay on. But obviously, then again, I'm not about power. If somebody chooses that they need somebody else in that position, I'm good with that. That's something we all know when we come up through the ranks, that we're at will employees and we can be moved at any time.
What about the job is different than what you expected when you stepped into this role back during last summer as acting chief?
Wow, that's difficult. Being a commander in operations, obviously you work with the majority of the officers on the street. We're in charge of the uniform division, and there's a ton to do day to day. And you've seen some of the stuff that Chief Williams had dealt with and how he delegated some of the things, but I never knew how much until I sat here and how much you get pulled each way. When people talk about yin and yang, it's like a yin, yin, yang, yang. It's like there's days that I feel like I don't accomplish anything because I'm constantly pulling one direction to the other. And the demands on your time, both during normal business hours and outside the normal business hours and on the weekends, it's tremendous. Like Sunday I already got an obligation to go to on Sunday. Next Saturday I've already got an obligation to go to next Saturday. I just got another one for Saturday the 15th, or whatever it is, So there's that constant. It's not a 9-to-5 job. It's just not. If it's done right, I don't think it can be a 9-to-5 job. We have to be accessible. One of the hard things right now that I'm struggling with, and my wife reminds me on a regular basis, is that you have a family. You have to balance, and finding that balance right now is hard. And I think once I get my staff in place and we get this restructuring done, that things will hopefully be a little bit easier, and I can kind of find that balance a little easier. But I think that's the hardest thing right now, is just find that balance between professional and personal life.
Yeah, I think that's something, a lot of people in jobs that kind of are outside the traditional 9-to-5 hours definitely struggle with, and chief of police is probably one of the most demanding jobs there is out there. What qualities do you feel like that you have that will help you succeed in this job?
I think first off is my integrity, and that I'm open. I'm approachable. I came through the ranks. Most of the people know me. I believe I have the support of the department, overwhelming support of the department. Obviously, there's going to be a few people here and there that aren't going to support you for whatever reason. But with that said, you have to be able to relate to the troops, the rank and file. They have to know that you care about them. They have to know that you support them. My job as a chief is to be a facilitator, is to give them what they need to do the job, to give them the support that they need to be successful out there. My job is also to be the liaison with the community, with the alderman, with the mayor's office, in order to gather that support and those needed items to get our job done successfully. But part of my job is also to be the educator out there to the public and explain why we do stuff. And sometimes that's difficult to do. People have their own perceptions, and sometimes they don't understand why we do things. And a lot of that comes back down to education and communication. I think here that one of the biggest things is just you got to surround yourself with the right people, people that put the agency above their own interest. And, we're not perfect. We've never been perfect. We're part of society. We're part of the community. We're just a smaller sample of that community. But we have to hold our people to a higher standard, and we have to let people know that we will be held to that higher standard.
Do you feel like, or what are some areas where you feel like you still can improve in this job, or things that
How I can improve?
Yeah, that you can improve on to be a better chief?
Oh, absolutely. One of the biggest things I need to do is, one of my weaknesses is delegation. I need to learn to delegate a little bit more. I've always been that person who's been hands-on. It's sometimes easier to do it myself than to give it to somebody else to do and then go back and verify it was done the way I wanted it or correctly. And that's one of my weaknesses. But I think once I get my staff in place and I get comfortable with them, that'll become easier. The other thing is just, I need to continue to educate myself. I don't have all the answers. There's nobody here at the police department has all the answers. That's where we have to have competent legal advisors down at Corporation Counsel to help us. We lean on them. We have peers out there. We have I have friends throughout the law enforcement community that I lean on for advice. Hey, we got something a little unusual here we haven't had in quite a while. Have you had something like this? And we lean on each other and we communicate. And I think the biggest thing is just to know that you got to continue learning. You got to continue to strive to do better. Never settle. My dad told me when I was younger, the day you stop learning is the day you stop living. And I've always believed in that, and I still to this day.
Are there things that you've done so far, or what are some of the things you've done in your time as acting chief that you're particularly proud of? Are there any?
The way I saw the acting chief or the interim chief position was that basically, obviously, everybody knows we were coming off the controversy over the shredding of internal affair files. And right now, during that time period, my job was basically to try to educate the public that 95% of the men and women on the department had no involvement in that at all. And to try to steer the ship. When we do something as law enforcement, whether it's myself or whether it's a patrolman, we paint a picture of all of us, and not just here at the department, but for law enforcement nationwide. I mean, probably the best example is the Rodney King thing. That incident painted all law enforcement across the country. But then again, in a positive light, 9/11 really helped law enforcement. It gave the community a positive perception, or even the Boston Marathon bombings, the tremendous job they did out there, painted us all with in a good light. So as the pendulum swings, what I tell my guys is that think about what you do, what you say, and can you live with it if it's on the front page of your paper the next day? And if you can't, then make that decision and roll with it. If you can't, then don't do it.
It's a good way of thinking of things. You talked about this a little bit in the your interactions with the council when they were considering your nomination, but what are your top goals for the department as you step into this job, in the permanent position, and how do you intend to accomplish those?
Well, the first thing, obviously, is I need to get my staff together, but I have already my own ideas about a 1, 3, and 5 year plan for the department. Obviously, we have to concentrate on the 1 year plan right now because that's where we're at. But I think we have to look down the road about forming a plan of action to move this department forward. As far as our 1 year, obviously, some of the most important things are improving morale, improving our technology so we can get to field-based reporting. It's embarrassing that we're not there. We've been striving hard to get there. Hopefully we'll soon be there. Enhancing our training, requiring more additional training for our guys. not just the state minimums. We want to enhance that. We want to encourage people to go to training. Obviously, there's a cost involved in that. The thing with training is that it's not cheap, and you train in hopes you never have to use it, but you have to be prepared if you're called to use it. Reaching out to the community, trying to repair and build better partnerships in the community, especially with the minority community. In addition to that, minority recruiting is huge on our plate. We're going to be testing this summer. We're kind of behind a little bit already. We need to move forward. What I plan on doing is taking a collaborative approach to minority recruiting, working with all the stakeholders, not just within the department or within city government, but in the community themselves. We've done a lot of good things over the years to try to recruit minorities, but we can do better. And I think getting more people involved, getting some fresh ideas, and we can't do it alone, and that's what we need to remember. It's hard to increase our minority numbers when we're not expanding the department, when we're only replacing retirees. But something that's often forgotten that goes hand in hand with recruiting is retention. Unfortunately, I've lost 2 of my best minority officers in the past few months to other careers in law enforcement, other job opportunities where they pay more and what they see as greener pastures.
Gotcha. Well, that takes care of another question that I was going to ask, which is minority hiring. And you talked a little bit about this already, but I kind of want to get a little more detail. On the night that the city council confirmed your nomination, you talked a little bit about your plan to review and possibly restructure the command staff for the department. Sort of what is that process going to look like, and how long do you expect it to take?
I don't think it's going to take very long. I've been working on it. Obviously, I got a couple drafts. I think what I need to do is obviously get the restructuring done. That way that leads to how many command staff positions we're going to have and who will be in those positions. I would hope to have something done within the next week or 2.
It's a pretty quick time.
Yeah. Here's the thing. People look at our org chart, and it hasn't been updated for several years. And part of that reason was we lost positions due to budget cuts. And I don't want to speak for Chief Williams, but I know it was made known to me that there was always a desire that when the economic tides turned, that we would already get some of those positions back because we felt they were important, whether that be the recruiter position, whether that be some command staff positions that we lost. Unfortunately, it's been 3 years and we haven't got those positions. So now it's time to update our org chart and our structure to reflect our management model. So will there be great changes? No. It'll just be more reflecting what we currently look like with a couple tweaks.
Okay. We've touched on some of these things already, but what do you think right now are the biggest challenges that your department is facing?
The biggest challenge right now would probably be the minority recruiting. I mean, it's always comes up as a topic of conversation in the community, and it's difficult. It's difficult. We're all recruiting the same people. We have to recruit. I want to recruit locally because you want to give jobs to the citizens of Springfield or this general area. But we know in order to find quality minority recruits who really want to get into law enforcement, sometimes we have to expand our area, to a regional level. If somebody's testing here, they're probably testing in Decatur, Champaign, Bloomington, Peoria, Joliet. We're all recruiting the same people. And it's very, very competitive. But what I would rather do is get into the school system early on, educate people on the benefits of being a police officer, and try to get people's mindsets started a little bit earlier about a career in law enforcement. And I know it's hard. I mean, I look at my nephews, and they're 20 years old, and he still don't know what he wants to do, And I look at my other nephew who's 19. Well, I thought about this. I thought about that. People don't really start thinking about what they want to do in their life until they're about that age. And this is where we got to try to work a little earlier. And it's difficult, and that's what I'm hoping will come out in this collaborative effort with the community. How can we get that mindset changed? And unfortunately, I've talked to several of my minority officers, and they've brought some concerns to me, what they think are some of the concerns of the minority community about wanting to be police officers, whether it's accepted to be a police officer in that community, what are some of the barriers there, whether those barriers are real or they're just perception. And what we've talked is a lot of it comes down to education, and it's convincing people that, hey, not only is law enforcement a good job, a real opportunity, a real career, it's something you can do. And that's difficult. That's difficult, and I've never policed my hometown because I wasn't originally from here, so I came here with no ties, really. But, I do have officers who grew up here, and some have said they don't want to work a specific area because of various reasons. Maybe that's where they grew up exactly, and they don't want to work that area for whatever reason. And then there's others say, hey, I want to work that area because that's where I grew up. So it's just overcoming that perception out there, or that thought process that they can or can't do this. I sit on the diversity council for the city, and it was interesting to hear one of my colleagues stated that at one of his meetings, one of the biggest barriers was that they thought you had to know somebody or be related to somebody to get hired at city government. So they did a little exercise, and he goes, well, I don't know how many people were in the room, but he goes, that means everybody around here probably knew somebody or was hired because they knew somebody. So raise your hand if you knew somebody and that's why you were hired. Well, of course, nobody raised their hand. So I think that sends a message out there. I knew absolutely nobody here when I moved here to take this job. I tested, I went through the process just as everybody else did. And that's the way it is for a lot of people. Do we have legacies or generations of people who come and their sons come or their kids? Absolutely. Do I want that to happen? Absolutely, because I think that is the best message. If one of my officers advises their child to come work for our police department, that speaks volumes to what they think of this place and how they were treated. And they must think it's a good career, because you wouldn't want your child to work in a career or at a department that was hostile or whatever. You wouldn't want that. And that's what we need to build, And that's hopefully something that even with the minority community, as we get more and more minority officers, that they tell their friends, they tell their families about, hey, this is a rewarding career. This is a great place to work. You ought to go test here, And that's something I've been, having conversations with my minority officers. I need you guys out there, be in the face of the department, to be help recruiting. Even though we don't have a full-time recruiter position no more, we're all recruiters. It's all of our jobs to recruit. I know that I've already talked to 3 individuals in the past 2 weeks that have already passed their information along on what we're going to be doing the testing. And it comes just from conversations, informal conversations, whether it be at the gas station, whether it be at a college, whether it be at, coming from some kind of community meeting. People walk up to you and say, hey, I kind of thought about this, And then taking that opportunity to expound on it and say, you know what, here's my business card. Call me. Why don't you come down and do a ride along and tell me if you think that this is something you might be interested in. If you have an interest at all, get more involved and learn more about it. And that's one thing we hope to do. We hope to have an orientation early on in the process to educate people exactly what the process is, how competitive that process is. And it is. I think last time was probably the fewest people who took the test that I can remember, and you have to check with HR for the numbers, but I want to still say it was around 400 people applied or took the test. Typically, we're hiring 8 to 12, maybe 15 if you're lucky, people a year.
Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you. 15 people a year. And the reality is there could be 600 or 700 people applying for that job. That's stiff competition. And I remember when I took the test, we had 2 sessions at the convention center, and both of them were full. And I want to say there was my finalist, I want to say there was 600 people on it, and 800 took the test or something. And what it comes down to is that 1 or 2 points on the testing process can be the difference between number 1 and number 10, or number 1 and number 20 even. That's how competitive it is. And while we only require a high school diploma to take the test or a GED to take the test, the reality is the people that we've been hiring typically have a bachelor's degree or military and an associate's degree or some combination of college and life experience. Every once in a while we will get that person who has just a high school diploma or GED that comes out and does a great job and gets hired. But they're a rarity. So what I tell people, because I always hear, well, I got a high school diploma, I'm qualified to come test. Yes, you meet the minimum requirements. But let me reiterate, the minimum requirements. The reality is you're going to be testing with people who have bachelor's degrees. Some have master's degrees. One of the gentlemen we just hired who's in the academy now has a master's degree. The reality is that when I came on, I remember my FTO my field training officer telling me, Kenny, this ain't a job, this is a career. You know what? He was right. I take it one step further now, and this is what I'm trying to implement to my guys. This isn't just a career, it's a profession, and we have to treat it as such. The things we ask our officers to do is, by no doubt, makes it a profession. We ask them to make sound decisions under pressure in life or death situations. We ask them to be able to read and interpret the law and then apply it. We ask people to be social workers, counselors. I mean, it runs the gamut of the responsibilities that these officers have to do. We expect them to be able to provide first aid. We expect them to be able to be first responders. It's a profession, and that's how we need to treat it as such.
Let's see. I think we touched on that one. Oh, maybe we didn't. So, and I think this may be something we've touched on a little bit too, but I just want to kind of focus on what you really feel like are the strengths that the department has right now. What do you think its biggest
I think
strength?
The strengths of the department is our personnel. We're a fairly young department, and the quality of the officers that we're hiring now, like I goes to a minute ago, they're educated. They work hard. They're dedicated. The strength is definitely the personnel, is our personnel. And that's how we provide services. We provide services through personnel. You look at our budget. The operating budget is so small compared to the cost of the personnel because that's how we deliver services to the community. But with that personnel, we need to remind them that it's not just to protect, it's also to serve. And sometimes that gets thrown out a little bit. Guys forget about it, and we have to remind them, hey, it's about customer service. It's about living by the golden rule and treating people as you want to be treated. Something I've always tried to tell my officers when I was a field training officer is that treat them as if they were your friends or family. And if you do so, you won't have any problems. And typically that is legitimate. Typically that's what happens. What we have to remember as officers is that we're called upon to help people when the situation has gotten out of control. People don't call us when everything's going good. They call us when they're in that domestic situation that's become explosive, or they're in some type of, their house has been burglarized and they're mad and angry, they're upset. They're mad. If they could have handled it, they wouldn't have called us, So what we need to remember when we go out there is that even when people make mistakes, doesn't necessarily make them a bad person. We're not the jury. We're not the judge. Our job is to go out there, handle the situation, calm the situation, return it to order, and take the appropriate enforcement action. Just because a person is arrested doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It just means they made a mistake. And there's a chance that, we arrest based on probable cause, not beyond a reasonable doubt. That's for the judge and the judicial system to decide. And don't take it personal. That's the other thing. Never take it personal. If I took it personal every time somebody cussed me out, called me a derogatory name or whatever, I would never be able to do my job. You just got to let it roll off the back. And I'll tell you, I've been thanked more times in my career than I've ever been cussed out. Because even those people who are angry and mad at you, if you take the time to listen, let them vent, and then explain to them why you're doing stuff, they may not always agree with you. But by the time you get to the county jail with that person, they're going to be like, hey, I'm sorry, man. I messed up and I apologize. I didn't mean to take it out on you. Because again, they're in a situation that they can't control at that time. So, and I think if you treat people that way, that's the best policy.
Gotcha. What do you think are some of the weaknesses within the department right now, and how can you improve on those?
I think one of the biggest weaknesses goes back to our operating budget. There's some things that there's a like to have and a need to have. And that's where we have to prioritize our fiscal dollars to make sure that we are using them as wisely as possible. I would love to have in-car camera systems for all my cars. It's not going to happen. Not at the cost of those cameras. It's just not going to happen. So one of the things we look at is what other new technology might be coming down the pike that we can use that might be cheaper. And in that instance, I think body cameras could be that item. But with that said, until they change the eavesdropping laws, it really doesn't make it beneficial for us to buy those, for the fact of, I don't want just a video. I can videotape all day long. The guys could wear body cameras without no audio if they wanted to. But it doesn't give us the entire picture. I want the audio and the video. How many times have you seen a video on TV that, from a surveillance camera, that shows something? You're like, wow, man, that went down that way. And then all of a sudden you talk to the person and you hear what actually happened. Like, wow, I can see what they said. You got to have both audio and video to paint an accurate picture. We have to hear the interaction between the officer and the civilian. We have to hear the verbal commands, etc. So it does us no good to purchase it just for the video. And I know some of my colleagues out there may be using them with just video, but I don't think that's something we're going to go down the road as. I'm hoping the State House loosens it up, gives us a wide variety of police contexts in which we could use something like that and allow us to do the audio. I think that day will come. I don't know if it's going to happen this session by no means, or if it takes a year or 2 years, but I think that's something when we look down the road. I know LAPD and New York City PD have just purchased a large amount, and I think as they become more and more accepted in the community and throughout the country, that'll open up things for us here.
Gotcha. It's always tough predicting what's going to happen down the street at the Capitol, that's for sure.
No, and just other technology. We talk about our fiscal dollars. There's so much technology that we could use. And nothing's cheap. The other thing is bodies. People. We talk about restructuring. I wish we didn't have to restructure. I wish I still had the command staff that I lost. If you look at when you see what my command staff is going to be, most likely compared to past command staffs, it's very small compared to some of the others, and that's just a reality of our fiscal constraints. I need boots on the streets, and we're going to have to work harder to be leaner and be more efficient. And it means working more. It means guys picking up jobs that other people used to do. But obviously, again, it comes down to fiscal. If we could have more officers on the street, we would love to do that. Not a week has went by in the past 3 months that somebody hasn't came to me, whether it be somebody from the public or somebody from my department or somebody from another agency asking for an officer for something. Whether it be to expand the neighborhood police officering program, whether it be expand our narcotics unit or proactive crime unit, or whether it be a task force from one of the federal agencies asking for another body, or one of the state agencies asking, hey, can you give us another body? We have such good working relationships with our other law enforcement agencies that we're constantly trying to do the same job, and we're all in the same boat that we would all like to have more resources, and we can't. And that's one of the adaptations that's going through, and that is one of the things we have to overcome, one of the challenges there.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wish Springfield residents knew about the department that maybe most of them don't, or anything like that?
There is, because I wish that more of the community would take advantage of our ride-along program, to come out and see the officers who are out there doing the job and get a better understanding of why we do things. And also just to see those officers as community members. They're citizens just like us. The difference is that we are the paid portion of the citizenry that goes out to serve and protect, but it's all of our jobs as citizens to be better neighbors, to watch out and try to make our community a better place for all of us. Another great way for people to get a better understanding of how we do this job is through our Citizen Police Academy. It gives you 10 weeks of upfront, this is what we do, this is how we do it. And we show them every aspect of the department. And I've never heard anybody come away from that program saying that, oh, this was a waste of time, I shouldn't have done this, or whatever, And I've heard several that have went through other programs, whether it be at the federal level or one of the other municipal agency or county agencies, and said, hey, we really like your program. We think you guys take it a step above and beyond. You guys really are open with us. You answer our questions. And it just gives them a reality of what it is, And to be honest, I would love to see more community members do that. I'd love to see that be a requirement of city council, and that's something maybe I'll reach out to the city council and encourage them at the next thing. Hey, if you haven't been to this, and some of them have, if you haven't been to this, maybe you ought to consider it. But it is a commitment. It's 10 weeks, so it's not easy. But I think it gives them a better understanding of why we do things.
Well, this is the last question I have for you today, and that's, as chief, what advice you would give to a brand new officer who's putting on the badge for the first time to be a Springfield police officer?
That's been the most rewarding thing so far. Unfortunately, in this position, I've had to let people go, and I've got the opportunity to hire people. And when you see those fresh faces and the eagerness and the desire that they have for this career and this profession, I tell them all the same thing, is that we're one of the few professions that your off-duty behavior will hold you to the same standard as your on-duty behavior. You have to be out there. You have to represent the community and the department in a positive light in everything you do. And it's difficult. And, I tell them, when done right, there's not a more rewarding career or professions in law enforcement, when it's done right, we have that. It's difficult because, I believe that most people give us trust until we do something to make them take it away. And so I tell them, we come out kind of with a blank sheet. You kind of got everything here, and then it's your job to build upon that trust or make it better, or you can go the opposite way and do something to make people distrust us. It's all about helping people. And don't get me wrong, again, I told you earlier, it's also about, taking bad guys to jail and that part of it, but it's not TV. People need to realize this. This is not TV. For every 5 minutes of action, there's a couple hours of paperwork to go with it. So it's not what's on TV. But on the reality is that the thing I tell them all, if somebody takes the time out of their life to send an email, to call, to come down and compliment you, that's extraordinary, because most people don't do that. You'll get your thanks on the scene. When you get done, by the way you handle that call, the people will come to you, thank you, officer, for this, or helping me for this. That's where your thanks come. But when they take it a step above and do the other, that means something to the officers out there. That means something to me, And when I get those type of letters, we have to make that acknowledgement to the officer. Hey, you did a great job on this. I got this call about this. You did a great job. What people will do faster than anything, though, is if you treat them wrong, or they perceive you treated them wrong, they'll make that call to IA, or they'll show up at IA, or they'll be down at the station talking to your supervisor, or demanding a supervisor at the scene. So you need to remember that. When you're out there, it's serve and protect. It's to treat everybody equally. It's to do the best job you can. There's sometimes when we leave a scene, and you're like, man, I wish I could have done more, but I just couldn't. There was nothing there. I legally couldn't do nothing. I'm stuck. You've given the advice. You've tried to tell them where they can go. And again, we don't always have all the answers, so we try to direct them to people who may have those answers for them. And that just goes back to the wide variety of responsibilities and duties that we deal with. We're the only agency opened up 24/7. We get calls from everything from loud noise to the barking dog, to the shootings, to the burglaries, to the abandoned house, to the loud muffler on the car, to the people parking blocking my driveway, to the homeless person who has no place to go or no food. It's just a wide variety of responsibilities, and or to the mentally ill person who's talking to himself in the middle of the roadway. It's something that you have to have an ability to adapt and be almost like a chameleon. You have to trade your hats left and right and keep going. And as I tell the young kids, number one thing, don't forget why you started this career, and don't forget, have fun. It's about having fun. It's about making the community better. And there's days you're going to see things and do things that you're like, it's going to haunt you for a while. Don't let it eat you up. Reach out for help. Sometimes as officers, we keep things in, and you see some horrible things out there. And it's not a sign of weakness if you ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness if you say, hey, I'm having a little problem with this, because if you're having a problem, chances are somebody else is too. And that's our job as administration, to get those people the help they need. And then ultimately, I tell the guys is that, we were reminded just last week with the incident over on Gregor Court, that danger is ever present. You never know when it's going to happen. You have to be prepared. Ultimately, we take an oath to serve and protect the community, and we sign up for that knowing that we may make the ultimate sacrifice, or be called upon to make the ultimate sacrifice. But with that said, my number one priority for my guys is to go home at night to their wives and family and children. I don't want to lose somebody in the line of duty. I don't want to be that chief that has to make that call, So I have to train my guys to be the best they can be. We have to train in hopes of never having to use that training, but we must be prepared. And while we may become complacent, we have to remember you never know when something's going to happen.